This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. I am very excited to be joining you today, talking about gaming and gamification, what it is and what it isn't. My name is Dr. Ludgate, and I am based out of Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida, which is quite close to Orlando. And today I'll be just sharing some ideas and strategies, some explanations and examples on all the things that surround games. So a little bit about me. My name is Dr. Ludgate, or Holly. I am a K-12 educator. I have taught in the education system for several years, all the way from kindergarten all the way up to graduate level education. I also have done instructional design, and I consider myself a lifelong learning advocate. Hi, everyone. I do believe that we are all lifelong learners and we never stop learning, especially if we are steeped in the field of education. So I'm excited to share with you today some of the things that I've learned over the years. In my doctoral research that I did out at Pepperdine University, my focus was in gaming and education, and I looked at collaboration and the way students would collaborate in different types of gaming environments. What I found in my research was that students that were in an environment that did not require them to collaborate together, to level up to a different level, or to earn anything specifically, such as Minecraft or Second Life, anything like that, where it's a virtual world where they can just build or do what they want, they actually collaborated 40% more than when it was required in a space for them to earn coins, or for this particular space for Quest Atlantis, it was Lumens. They really had a much higher level of discourse. They were talking with students at a much higher level. And then they also developed a lot of how do I put this? They developed different sorts of ways to earn money. So they created their own economy. So just the level at which they were interacting with others and stepping up, showing a lot of these 21st century skills that we are looking for with students of today and tomorrow, it was happening within games. So when I saw this type of thing happening, I thought there's really something interesting with games, and there's power in games. And so the more we can utilize it in classrooms and figure out ways to incorporate it without it having to gamify your entire classroom, I think the better. So I'm excited to share some of these ideas and concepts with you today. Right now, what I do at Full Sail University is I'm the Director of Learning for Emerging Technologies. So I'm steeped in a lot of different things here at the university related to technology and education, and I'm hoping to interact with you in the future. So let's get started. Okay. So moving on, today the presentation flow will be to talk about kind of the context and why we're here, what this is about. We're then going to move in to some examples of gamification and gamifying your classroom. And then your turn. This is going to give you some ideas and strategies on how you might be able to go about putting games or gamification in your class. And then if we have time, we'll hop into esports and what it is and the future of esports. And then we'll do a quick wrap up and we'll have some Q&A. So first, some of you may recognize this game. This is actually one of the originals that I played growing up, tic-tac-toe. And while it may be very simple compared to the games that we now see today, it is still fundamental. It has the basic rules that you need for game. It's got strategy, it's got some chance, it also has some fun elements in it. So there's a lot of, even with this basic game, there's a lot of gaming elements within it. And it still can be used in classrooms today. You don't have to have a lot of technology to be able to incorporate games. So in this graphic, this actually shows you some of the basic elements of games. So we always are going to have an activity within a game. at the beginning of the game, it is an uncertain outcome. You don't exactly know what's going to happen by the end. This typically is made up, so it is artificial. It could be fantasy as well. You're not getting any material gain from this game. It's really just about the strategy and not knowing exactly what's going to happen, the mystery of it. Typically in games, there's collaboration. Like I was speaking earlier about my dissertation research, we find that there is a lot of collaboration that happens within games. Even if it's single player, you're still playing with others and collaborating. Of course, there's elements of competition. And you also participate typically with games voluntarily. Sometimes it is required in classrooms, but a lot of times we find that it's a voluntary situation. And you're also making decisions throughout this entire gaming process. You also have goals that you meet, whether you know that there's goals involved. Within games, goals are always built in. So you're always going to make sure you're getting from one objective to the end. Safety is important within games. You want to know that while you're in this game, there are safe rules. So you know that you're going to get to the end and still feel like there is some controllable elements. And then always, 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 rules are part of games. We always know the rules. With tic-tac-toe, we know there's an X, there's an O. You're one or the other. It is play-by-play turn, and whoever can make a line across or down, diagonal, is the winner. Those are the rules. So these are the basic tenets of a game. So one of the next things I want to show you is actually a video that does a great explanation of gaming and gamification.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education, Gamification, and the Classroom. Understand the why, where, when, and how of gamification. Gamify your classroom to create an atmosphere of excitement. So, why should teachers gamify? First off, it empowers students. Ultimately, their abilities and efforts will determine their success using this strategy. Gamification actually builds motivation for students. Remember, no one likes to lose, and the desire to win will motivate your students. Some teachers may think the gamification concept would be too overwhelming for students, but in fact, students are used to playing games. One of the best things a teacher will see from gamifying their classroom is that their students continue to try and try and try and try again. It is actually fun for students. You'll see some smiles on their faces. Next up is a quick comparison of games, gamification, and game-based learning, which are all actually different. A game is solely defined as a structured form of play. Games are there simply for entertainment value. They are meant to keep the player highly engaged. Next up is game-based learning, which uses actual games to meet learning objectives. The students learn from playing the game, which can be a commercial game, non-commercial game, digital or non-digital game. Minecraft EDU. And gamification is essentially adding game elements into your course. This includes incorporating badges, certificates, and rewards for effort and successful learning. Gamification is the adding of game elements to a lesson or a classroom. These elements are actually motivational tools and engagement factors. The first element is the setting of goals, similar to the completion of stages. This includes side goals, short-term goals, and long-term goals. Badges are another element. Think of how badges are used in the military. The ability to level up. Allow students to level up as they master various standards. Other examples include presenting the students standings, just as you would a high score on a video game. This can be done anonymously. Whenever you gamify a course, it is necessary to provide students with relevant information as to how they are being tracked. Competition is at the heart of gamification. It can really be found in all the elements that I've mentioned. Teamwork is an element of gamification that directly relates to developing soft skills in 21st century workplace practices. And lastly, if you really want to get creative, assign different characters to students. Even consider something as simple as letting your students choose an avatar. To finish up, I'm going to offer successful classroom examples. Now, one of the best examples of how teachers are using gamification is by something called experience points. Experience points then translate into actual grades for students. These points are earned by completing a number of assignments and tasks and things like that. The more points earned, the higher grade the student would receive. Students can engage in scavenger hunts, where students compete to find answers. Teachers could also set up mathematical tournaments similar to March Madness. If you want a great example of gamification, look no further than Khan Academy. The way they hand out badges and earn stars is a prime example. The possibilities and ideas are endless, so feel free to come up with your own ideas to gamify your classroom. Maybe even allow the students to come up with some ideas. Right now, I want to say thank you for your time. Please subscribe to the channel and don't forget to like and share. Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education.
Okay, so as we just saw, those were great examples of the difference between games, game-based learning, and gamification. So they are three very separate scenarios, but all relate around to games. So one of the reasons gaming even became this idea to put into the classroom is from Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. It's a very interesting last name that he had, a little challenging to pronounce, but he created this idea of flow. And essentially when you say you're in a flow state, you're like being in the zone. And so as you see in this diagram, if your skill level is really high and the challenge is really low, you're going to be bored. But if your skill level is low and your challenge is really high, you're going to probably have some anxiety. So the goal is to find games or game strategies that bring students right into the middle. You want to get them right in the flow where they're not bored and they're not challenged too much to where it's frustrating. You want to get them in that zone. And have you ever had the experience where you may be doing something at home or doing something at work or working with the kids and you look down and you say, wow, I was just zoned out. I was so in it, I didn't even realize how much time actually went by. That's the flow, being in flow. So this whole idea really relates to games. And I certainly use that heavily when I was talking about the power of games, because so many kids can zone out for hours in games because they are specifically in flow. So one of the things I wanted to also talk to you about was this idea or this definition of gamification. And this really is using this idea of game mechanics to engage users or students and potentially change behavior. But the idea with gamification, it's really the game is not the goal. It's really about engaging the users and changing behavior. So gaming is just one strategy to get kids excited about something you're learning. It is not about them sitting down and spending X number of minutes or hours playing a game itself. So some of the basic tenets for gamification, it's not about making everything a game. So I have several teachers that will say to me, I really want to gamify my classroom, but I don't even know where to start because I've got so much curriculum I have to get through throughout the year. I totally get it. It is not about making your entire classroom a game. It's about finding specific elements that you can actually take and put in your classroom without it feeling too overwhelming. This is also not about badges and points and leaderboards. You don't need that throughout your entire classroom. That can be incorporated in certain elements if you want to do badging like we saw with Khan Academy, but it is not specifically about that. And it can't fix a bad product. So if you've got a lesson that really needs work because students are typically not engaging with it, you may need to work on the actual content of the lesson first before you start thinking about how you can add gamification to it. So one of the questions that typically I get asked is, why are games good for learning? And as you can see in this diagram, we have the flow theory over here, some of the laws of learning, exercise, intensity, effect, readiness. These are all the basic laws of learning. engagement, story, audio, visual, you've got over here, mastery. And so students are going through this process of why games are good. While they're doing the games, they're going through all of this. They're engaging in it, they're mastering it, there's rewards tied to it, they're doing play, they've got this sense of flow state. But as you can see, this is representing that games target the entire brain. They are a whole person experience, not just left brain or right brain. They actually bring them both together, which is why gaming and games are so powerful for learning. One book that you may want to check out, I'm just going to quickly go through this, is The Kids Are All Right. And this book talks about this gamer generation because so many kids now play games, so many students. And there's 7 rules in this book. And so quickly, I'll just say everyone can succeed. So this is where gamers are optimistic. So most of the kids coming in are optimistic, and they believe they can succeed by working hard as long as they are working long enough and hard enough. And you got to play the odds. Students these days and gamers are twice as likely as baby boomers to believe that success is due to luck. Gamers are good at teamwork because they typically are working in groups, and they're learning from each other, not just one person, not just a teacher, not just a coach. And ideas for doing this are teaching by introducing a problem and then kind of stepping out of the way, being that mentor or that guide on the side for them. And then another one, kill the bosses and trust strategy guides. So you want to position yourself as an educator, as someone who's been there and can offer tips to the students. They love strategy guides. So one way to do some gamifying of your classroom is to create strategy guides for maybe an exercise or a project that they're going to work on. And if you can incorporate some of these basic game elements that they're used to seeing outside the classroom, it actually can bring more fun into the classroom and when they're working on it. So also watching the map. So a lot of times students can orient themselves really well when they've got this map in front of them because they're doing that a lot within games. So if you can create some learning plans or maps for them so they know from point A to point B is where you need to get. Here are some of the obstacles, some of the challenges, some of the exciting things that you're going to need to do. They also are going to resonate with that idea. And if they can't see it, they're probably going to ignore it. So in the game, they just run right past it. Same concept with you. So if you are incorporating a strategy guide or a learning plan, make sure that you point out what you want them to see, because if they don't see it, they're probably going to run right past it. And make sure that you're putting the right teams together. So if you're going to be introducing a problem and stepping out of the way, as we spoke about, avoid doing a lot of mixed skilled and unskilled people in the same group. A lot of times when they're grouped with the same skill levels, they're going to be able to accelerate faster and stronger. So I would encourage you to think about being able to cluster them in groups that they feel more comfortable with their skill level. So now I wanted to take you into some examples that I find have wonderful ideas on how to go about doing different types of gamification and games in the classroom. So TEDx is something, or TED is a location that you may visit on the web, or you've heard about TED Talks. So TED has actually an educational site as well. So if you go to TED or ed.ted.com, you can go in here and go to Educators Start Here, and you can see there are a ton of resources for educators. You can create your own lesson, incorporating some of the videos that they have here. You can have students create their talks on their own with classrooms or clubs. And then also, if you wanted to do a TED style talk within your school, you can actually do something like that. But there are so many wonderful areas you can visit here and search by specific subject. So you can scroll down here and find out something that might resonate with your class. But this is a wonderful resource that I certainly recommend. Okay, next, Khan Academy. We mentioned this earlier. Some of you may be familiar. This platform goes through math, science, programming, history, and their main mission at Khan Academy is they want to provide education to everyone around the world. Meaning right now they have got 36 languages that they actually serve within all of their content. And all of this is completely free. So if you want to go in here for teachers, you can sign up for free. You can look at all the different courses they have. As you can see, they have a ton of courses, and a lot of these also have learning outcomes with them. But I highly recommend going in here, checking if you wanted to go into maybe computer programming. You can see all the basic elements they're going to be doing just within a specific course. So introduction to JavaScript, drawing and animation, introduction to HTML, you can see all the things that go into that. So this is an excellent resource if you're trying to figure out ways, because there are gaming elements within Khan Academy. If you're wanting to sample doing it, but not have to actually go about incorporating elements by yourself. Okay. Next, tiny cards. So Duolingo makes the idea of flashcards fun and incorporates gamification. So you can go in here, create your own, or you can go into, let's go into Chinese animals, and you can see the different lessons are in here, and you can flip the cards. So it does a little bit of gamification with this. You can just keep going through these flashcards, and they have a ton of topics that you can go through, and then you can see all the different cards. It's a great way to get especially the younger kids excited about it. It's a little more interactive than a traditional flashcard, so that might be something that you may want to incorporate within your class. Another one, Blink List. So this is more for professional, more for the educators, but this actually is a place where they summarize over 2,000 nonfiction books, so you can easily digest it in about 15 minutes. Now you can go in and start a free trial, but you can go in and do the audiobooks. You can also do text, and you can go through a ton of different books if you're trying to learn something but don't have the entire time that you might need to get through all these books. It's almost like Cliff Notes, but gamified a little bit. There's definitely game elements as well within this. Another one, Memrise. This is a learning app for language, and you can start for free. You can choose the language you want to go into. So let's say Portuguese, and I'm going to tell them I'm a beginner. So you do have to log in. It is free. I don't have an account, but it is a great way. As you can see, it's very simple way. You've got a visual, you also have the text that goes along with it, and it interacts with you. And a lot of people really resonate with this. They have over 20,000 native speaking videos within this. You can learn English, French, Spanish, German, Japanese, Korean. They also have courses in art, math, and history. So this might be something, if you're teaching language to your students, this might be a great way to engage them as well. And it does gamification in that. So Solo Learn is also another tool that shows them how to code, but they go about it using challenges. So they can go into coding challenges with others, and they can earn experience points. They can also go into a code playground where they can show off the code they've created and get feedback from other people in the community. And then you also have a leaderboard where you can see who some of the top coders are, and that might motivate some of your students. So here are some of the courses that you can go through and see, and all the different topics: Swift, Ruby, C, jQuery, lots of different topics, HTML, C++. You also have your code playground. So you can go in here and you've got Minecraft, drawing in Python, got lots of different stuff. And these are, lots of different areas that people can go in and post, and then also connect with others on. So Duolingo, which we heard about earlier with the flashcard, it's a language learning app on your mobile phone. There's tons of languages in here that you can go into. So let's go into Hindi, and we can go into culture. And I'll go ahead and allow them. And then we can choose a goal. So this is already gamifying it just a little bit. So I'm going to be casual in my goal. And I'm going to say I'm new to Hindi. And as you can see, it just pronounced this to me, and I have to choose one of the ones that I think it is, and I'm correct in that. So it's a quick and easy way to get kids engaged in this language, and it uses the basic elements of gaming. Okay, so another one that's become fairly popular in the US is Classcraft. And this is actually a tool that a lot of teachers are using and incorporating within their classroom to get them learning about a lot of different topics that they're trying to introduce. But they also can assign specific experience points. So if you want to ensure that students get a point for asking a good question or correctly answering the question or being collaborative, you can add the XP points in game. You can define those as the educator because you'll be the administrator on it. And then health points. So the consequences, if they're negative or not paying attention in class or disturbing, or they didn't turn in their homework or they're arriving late, you can actually remove points as well. So now thinking about how to go about implementing gamification. So some of the first things you're going to want to do is define the context. Like what's the main topic you're wanting to potentially gamify? Some of the objectives that you want to work on, and how that experience might go within your class, and then actually figuring out what resources that could be used with it, and then applying the elements within your class. So you're first going to think about a gaming platform. If it's used individually or as a group, is it going to be very supervised, or is it going to be something that they do at home? Is it going to be optional? Is it going to be a reinforcement tool? Is it graded? Is it non-graded? Is it extra credit? So you need to kind of define those elements first for learning, and then you need to define it for the student. So what are some pain points? What are some things that you think might be challenges for the students? For example, why student submissions could be poor quality, how you want them to deliver it. Is it something you need them to say to you orally? Is it something that they're turning in paper or digitally? And also, is it low motivation? If their grades aren't being counted towards their final grade or their assignments aren't being counted, is that something that you're trying to help change? You then want to define your objectives. You want to think about what goals need to be achieved through this process. You want to clearly state when they complete the game. And you don't want to say we want them comfortable with something. We want to say students will be able to what? You want to quantify. Instead of saying know the top X number of things, you will say something along the lines of students will be able to articulate through whatever mode, if it's through presentation or through an essay, what they learned by actually going through this game. And then think about the experience. You want to think about what students need to learn and achieve by each stage or milestone in this process. And that can then translate into the different levels within the game that you're trying to put together. You also need to think about the group learning components of it and how to go about categorizing it. Identifying your resources. This is the part that can take a while. And sometimes I would encourage you to tap into your fellow instructors and or students because they may have some information too. You may want to look at you being the content expert, you looking at your material and how it's already sequenced. The game building components. If you're wanting to actually create a full out game, you probably will need 3D assets. Measuring student progress, how are you going to track that? What determines once they've reached a level and they've accomplished it? Define the currency. Is it XP points, experience points? Is it time? How are you going to define that? Figuring out the rules of the game. That's something that's very important too, because games always have rules. And figuring out how they're going to get feedback, because students and you are going to need to know how things are working throughout the game. There's also what's called game mechanics. self elements, and social elements. So these types of mechanics are things that they may be doing by themselves within the game, and then also within group or collaborative settings. So it could be points, achievement badges, levels, the restrictions. These help students actually compete with themselves and help them get stronger, and also keeps them going because it's achievement that they're seeing. The social elements are more about within groups, and you may have a leaderboard, you may not. That class craft is a good example of taking a game and incorporating a lot of these elements within it. This also helps with community and thinking about their achievements within a group setting and in teamwork. Okay, so at this point, I probably don't have time to go through esports, but I just want to say this is something that is very powerful, and it is, I would say, one of the top things coming into the world today within games and learning. We are seeing students from all over that are just excited about the idea of esports, and so many schools now are incorporating esports into after school curriculum or extracurricular activities. They're putting together esports clubs. There's a lot of buzz around esports. And you can figure out ways to bring this into your student body to get them excited about the idea of gaming. And there's a lot of wonderful things that come from esports that may not be 100% in your classroom, but can still get them excited about finishing things in your classroom to then get them to be able to play or compete with their group, and then thinking about those 21st century skills as well. So at this point, we have reached our time, but I want to thank you all today for joining me when we jumped in a little bit to learning about gamifying your classroom and game-based learning and gamification. And I hope that you've now found some strategies that you might be able to incorporate within your classroom. And I look forward to maybe chatting with you further about how I might be able to help you do that in the future. Thank you so much.